Disney had their fourth quarter earnings call, and we're not going to talk about every aspect of the business, mostly focusing on the theme parks here.
Exactly. So concerning parks and experiences, it looks like there was 5% growth in passenger cruise days for cruise line, 2% increase domestic hotel occupied room nights, and 1% increase in Disney Vacation Club unit sales. There's also 3% an increase in average guest spending, 1% increase from volume growth, increase in operating income, stuff like that. Everything's increased. What decreased and what they didn't really go into very in depth was that the attendance did not increase.
Yeah.
The attendance did go down.
It went down about 1%.
It did.
So one thing about it's not just theme parks, it's experiences. So this is like cruise lines, theme parks.
The cruise line is what put everything up.
Right. So basically,
so you know.
the experiences division did show, I think it was overall growth of like 13%, something around along those lines. Mm-hmm. Most of it being boosted by the cruise line.
Yep.
Basically, when it came to the domestic parks, a decrease of 1% in attendance. But a 5% increase in revenue. So yet again, higher per capita spending per guest, even though attendance was down, revenue went up, which yet again, the price hikes is what drives a lot of the revenue that increases on that. When you look at what Disney was saying last year about when Epic opened and how they thought it was going to go, there was lots of the old rising tide lifts all boats type of situation. And, it's good for us because it's going to bring people to our parks. Well, if you look at Comcast, 2 straight quarters of almost 20% increase in revenue. And this is the first full quarter with Disney, with Epic on, basically on the books as a competition, and, down 1%. Not the end of the world, but definitely not the rising tide lifts all boats situation that they basically portrayed it to be, which is why I think we saw them announce earlier, a couple months ago about these, short-term turnarounds. The animation experience coming to Hollywood Studios, Walt getting added to the Carousel Progress, because I think at least, and I think we both were saying the entire time, the shows and parades this summer were not going to be enough to basically offset a brand new theme park.
Right.
And so I think, and I had said many times, if Disney was flat or down 1% or up 1%, that would be considered a win during this time period, because there's not a lot of new stuff coming online, lots of construction going on for the coming years. Being down attendance at all, obviously it's not something they were expecting or putting out there that they were expecting.
Yeah. And we talked about this before going live here, recording. And we basically said, when you think about the increases of pricing that they do every year at the parks specifically, I mean, what percentage of that do you think they do every year? You always put 25-cent increase in certain food items, and like soda goes up 50 cents or 25 cents. But when you think about it, it's 5%?
Probably something like that.
And all of this is showing, 5% increase in growth. I'm like, so we're consistent. We're just, you're making more money. Sure. You're making more revenue, but your costs are still high. You're still, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? It's still, they're raising prices. So they're going to make more.
Right. I mean, basically, if they didn't raise prices, the revenue would probably be pretty flat.
Yeah.
Or a dip. If they saw a 1% decrease in attendance, then obviously there likely would have followed a dip potentially in terms of the revenue. And I mean, listen, this is what Disney has decided they want to do. And they're not necessarily focused on much as attendance as they are revenue. And as long as their revenue is up, they're not going to care about a drop off in attendance. I think that should be something that I don't think they're worried about 1% drop off. I honestly think that they expected this summer to go different.
Yeah.
Just from their own things that they were saying.
I don't think they expected. I think they hoped. I think they were very much okay, this is the things we're going to do to try to get people to come in to the parks and to the hotels and all that stuff. And they did that stuff. And I don't know how effective it was at the parks, especially. Now, the hotels wise, they said they're 87% occupancy for this quarter, which is really high. But they were running a bunch of hotel discounts.
They ran a lot
this summer.
Well, and that's one thing to think about too. They ran a ton of discounts during this time period, on top of really trying to promote out there all this the shows and parades they were doing.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at a scenario where they ran a whole bunch of discounts, They were confident for its most part. Kind of closer to Epic opening, there were some different. They were kind of saying a little bit of different verbiage. Hugh Johnston was saying that they were expecting a slight impact from Epic about a month or so before Epic opened. So they sounded much more confident 6 months to a year before Epic opened than they were kind of leading up into it. But I think we talk about a lot. The price increases. This is something they've decided to go down this route. They made a bunch of money on it. But I think when you look at this in the long run, I'm like, this works until it doesn't. In terms of these, they're not going to be upset about another increase in revenue. But I mean, to me, there's only so much you can continue to drive this up in the short amount of time that they have, especially with construction coming on the horizon, which could lead a lot of people to basically, like, even if they're going to go to Disney, say, let's wait till this stuff's done before we go, which is the same thing that happened to Universal with Epic. This is kind of how I expected. I either was expecting Disney to be flat or down a little bit. So I'm pretty much like, it was along the lines of what I was expecting. I think what would be very interesting is going into next year, if Universal can get Epic Universe, more efficient, more people in that park. So if it's already having somewhat of an impact, which I think obviously it has this summer, it's very likely only going to get stronger over the coming years. And then how does that affect Disney at that point? So, but again, I think that's why they announced those things coming this next summer, to try and have actual attractions as a way to promote, people coming to the park.